Art style is a bit more than just the way you draw. It's also the subject you chose, the kind of angle of camera you choose in the time, like what kind of narrative you go for.
Welcome to the Pixel Paper Podcast, a series where we get to know the creative processes behind up-and-coming digital artists. My name is Noor, graphic designer and work-in-progress artist, and I'll be your host for this series. Today's guest is all the way from France. Claire Sun is a vibrant visual artist and a graduate of the ultra-famous school of animation, Gobelins or Gobelins in English. Today she shares her experiences that she had at university, including how she made a super cool Japanese-inspired short, which was the opening for the Annecy International Animation Film Festival in 2019. If you want to find out more about what life is like in a top animation school, as well as other stuff, please enjoy this episode with Claire Sun. Hi Claire, how are you?
Hi, Noor, I'm fine. What about you?
I'm good, thank you so much. For our audience, can you please introduce yourself?
So, hi, I'm Claire. I'm a 21 years old background and visual development artist from France. I studied animation and animated filmmaking for 4 years at Gobelins in Paris, and I graduated last July.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And I followed you because you have this really kind of bright and cheerful style. So it's really like colorful and it's full of life. So can you take us through your art journey to get to where you are now?
Thank you so much. It's a bit of a cliche, but I've been drawing for as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a rather shy kid when I was growing up. So I would come home from school and immediately watch TVs and kids shows and drawing just right in front of my TV. I would do so much fun comics, about the different things I like. And I could draw pages and pages without getting sick of it. And looking back, I wish I still had this kind of productivity now. Well, I briefly considered other career options, such as going into science, since my family is a scientific one. I've always known that art would be the way for me. And my parents were worried, but they supported me anyway, which I'm very grateful for. I wanted to get into comics at first, but then I learned that you could actually work into animations, like doing animated films and shows, and that became my goal. So I went to a general high school, but I had art classes in the evening once a week to try and get into animation art schools. So I had an art teacher whom would make me try a lot of things like watercolor, acrylics, charcoals, pastels, and it helped me enlarge my artistic visions, So yeah, it was cool. Finally, I got into Gobelins after high school, and I spent like the 4 last year learning how to craft animated movies. So yeah.
Cool. So it seems like you have a very traditional path to doing art, which is quite nice. I mean, when did you get into digital art?
I think it was during middle school. But at first, I didn't really know how it works. So because when I was a kid, as I told you, I watched a lot of TV shows and I would search for a lot of fan art online and save the one I love, and it was mostly digital art. So I tried to get into it, but at first I didn't have a tablet, so I would, use my mouse to paint on Photoshop. It was really, really tedious. But yeah, I got a tablet in middle school and I just tried to start working on it. But honestly, it only really, really picked up once I was in Gobelins during my first year, because I had to do an internship at the end of the first year. And when I was in the studio, it was fully digital. So I had to kind of learn how to make it work in digital. And since then, I'm mostly working in digital because it's easier to lay down ideas fast, without having to put out all the paintings and all. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you mentioned that you are studying at, how do you pronounce it, Gobelins?
In French we say Gobelins, but in English we tend to say Gobelins, so I don't really know.
Okay, so you graduated from Gobelins, so it's a very reputable school, all around the world. So can you tell us about your experience in the school?
So yeah, as you said, it has quite a reputation, which is a bit intimidating for sometimes. But Gobelins was a great experience for me. I learned a lot and met many talented artists whom I was lucky to call my classmate for 4 years. During the first year of Gobelins, we mainly learned 2D animations. So we started from the basis and we worked on paper, which was very tedious, but I think it's really great because in the industry nowadays, most people work on digital, so you won't have the opportunities to work on paper as well. So it was really nice, and it made me learn to anticipate before doing a stroke, because it's really, really annoying when you make a mistake on paper. So yeah, after that, we also had many exercises going over the whole pipeline. So it went over like backgrounds, visual development, storyboard, even compositing and such. We also had some kind of 3D exercises just to have some basis as well, since it's a big thing in the industry. But most students from Gobelins like drawing, so they will mostly do 3D animation work. And all of this allowed me to test out what kind of job I would like to do. And so it was really great. Also, now I specialize in development and backgrounds. I still have knowledge in the other area of the pipelines. So when I work on a project, it helps me anticipate what could be a problem later on. So for example, when I design a character, I will maybe avoid to put too many details because it makes it really complicated to animate afterwards. So yeah, I've learned to think ahead and be rigorous in my tasks so I don't cause a problem in the overall working chain. So yeah, we also had many teamwork experiences. And as you may know, behind most animated media, there's a big team of artists. So it was great training to learn how to work with other people who have other methods of working and so on. So yeah, after the 4 year, like we did a graduation movie that last year, basically, or this year, basically. So it will be out in the school YouTube channels in fall.
Oh, nice.
And finally, in my class, people age range from like 17 to I think 24 when we entered. So it's a big age gap, and people had a lot of different backgrounds and experiences. So learning from each other was also one of the highlights of my time in Gobelins.
Nice. And your work, I mean, a lot of it seems quite anime-esque to me. So where do you get your inspiration from?
Like many kids, I have grown up watching Japanese anime shows that were broadcasted in France, such as Digimon Adventure, Pokemon, Magical Doremi, Cardcaptor Sakura. So I think it was an early inspiration for me. I remember that I tried to copy Cardcaptor Sakura manga panels and covers, like I loved her dresses and all. So yeah, you could say it was how I learned to draw in the first place. But as you may know, anime style wasn't super well perceived at the time. So I thought I had to change if I wanted to get into art. This led me to a few years of experimenting with other art styles, which I don't regret because I learned a lot of things and new way of drawings, but it was a bit of an existential crisis, So with time, I just realized that I didn't need to have only one particular style. I could have many, and I learned to adapt my style to the project I'm working on. However, since I learned to draw with anime, and it was what brought me to drawing in the first place, it's my most natural style. I retain a huge influence with animes. And in general, I just love the soft aesthetics and the themes of nostalgia that are in anime. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think a lot of people I've interviewed as well are quite inspired by anime, like it's a very nostalgic kind of look, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it is. Most people watch Japanese movie during their childhood, so yeah, I think it's nostalgic.
Yeah, definitely. And your work as well, the color is very vibrant and saturated. So how does color kind of play in your work?
When I was a child, I remember one time I was kind of sad and I thought I should make a colorful drawing so it will make me happy, And since then, colorful art is kind of a trademark for me. I like to think that colors are like moment of life. Happy ones are vibrant and cheerful, and sadder ones are muddy and dull. But it's the dull colors that makes the brighter one stand out, So that's why I try to think of when I think of colors. And later on, I hope I can look back on my art and think I had a colorful journey,
Yeah. And have you learned how, like, color theory and stuff in school?
So good questions. I had from the one then had some classes, but I still think it's mostly feelings, so I should learn more theory. But in my last years, we had a teacher for British movies who told us a lot about color theory and psychology. It was really, really interesting. So I'd love to learn more from now on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's really fascinating. Like color is, I mean, I thought it's really important to learn color theory, which it is. But again, a lot of people I've interviewed have said that they kind of just follow their instincts.
Yeah, I think color is really, really fascinating, you said, because it's really subjective, you know, like you have some codes like red is danger and all, but you can also make red look very warm and friendly, you know, so it's really funny how it works.
That's true. I mean, I guess it depends what color it's next to as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that, you know, one of your films is going to come out soon on the university YouTube channel, but you also worked on a short animated film called A Taste of Tokyo, which I thought was kind of like an advertisement, actually. So can you share your experience in creating this film?
Of course. So this short was actually an opening made for the Annecy Festival in 2019 in the context of my studies at Gobelins. So I worked on it with my teammates Adèle Sabi, Quentin Rigaud, Magali Doniac, Lauren Bay, and Brenda Clayman, who was actually an exchange student from CalArts at the time.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So the festival theme this year was Japan. So we had to pay tribute to Japanese culture with our openings. And we were brainstorming several ideas when some came up with looking up into retro Japanese advertisements. And, you know, we were charmed by how colorful the ads were and how really enduring, because it's very over the top, you know. So that's how we got the idea of making a fake Japanese drink.
Cool.
I was mostly involved in animation for this project, but it was very insightful to see how everyone's work slowly got linked together. Music played a big role in our short, therefore we had to animate our main character dancing in rhythm with it. It was quite challenging, but we used reference from old singing movies like Singing in the Rain, West Side Story, or Les Demoiselles de Rochefort in order to bring a choreography reminiscent of those times. And the music itself, it was made by two music students, Diego Ayala Rafari and Basil Renard. The goal was to further bring back a nostalgia feeling associated with this era. And as a final touch, Quentin has a great idea to add lyrics by subtitles on screen. So it would be like a karaoke, you know? And what was really, really sweet is that the audience in Annecy, by the end of the day, they already kind of knew the lyrics. So they sung around each time our short was broadcasting. It was really, really good.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, that's such an amazing project to work on as a student.
Yeah. We were really, really lucky. I mean, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you split the work between yourselves?
You know, so the teams were formed by the teachers, so we didn't choose. But it was great because you would work with people you maybe didn't know that well because they were your friend before, and also for me it was really great. I learned to know more people, and I had fun with them. So the work, it depends on each people's preferences. You know, some people in the class are more oriented into visual development, some are into animations. Personally, at the time, I was thinking of doing animation, so I stuck to animation work. But yeah, people who were more at the backgrounds would do the backgrounds, such as Adele. He did most of I think all of the backgrounds of the short.
Wow.
And but well, you know, in a movie, the most time-consuming time is animation. Because it's really, really long. So most people are animation and one on backgrounds. So after that, we just you know, helped each other when someone was a bit late or had a bit of trouble, and also since it was a small team, I think we all touched a bit of everything. So yeah.
And is the animation frame by frame or?
It's traditional animation. It was made on TV Paint this time, so it's software. We didn't do, you know, in one second animation, you had in general something like 24 images, which is quite a lot. But in animation, most of the time you will have half of it. Like you put one picture and it stays for the time of two pictures, you know. So I think we had around either 12 picture by second, or even just a third of 1/4 or 24. So it wasn't exactly one frame at a time, but yeah.
Wow, okay. And you'd have to, when you say you're animating, are you animating like the characters or the backgrounds? Or?
The characters, we had some background animation, but it was made in After Effects. You just have different layers of the backgrounds and you make them slide on After Effects to make it look like it's moving, but it's not really animated in traditional way.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really interesting. I think because a lot of people are kind of interested in animation and stuff, so it's nice to see the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think animation is really fascinating.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is it takes so much time, but it's definitely worth it.
It takes so much time, but it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. And you also worked on a client project called Vaughn. So how does your process differ when you work with a client?
I'm really happy you asked about it because it's a project I love. So as you said, it started off as a commission work, but now I'm part of the creative team as well.
Oh, amazing.
So back to your question, Vaughn is a project commissioned by Diego Cabrera, also known as Pretty Patterns. It's a story he created around his upcoming music albums. So he approached me mid 2019, I think, and I thought it was a nice idea to carry a story through music. So he commissioned me for an album cover and some character design for his main character, Lisa. For client work, I roughly have the same process. The only difference is that I send check-ins at each step to decide what kind of direction we go in. For example, I would send him color keys for the concept I was making, and he would tell me which one he liked the most, and if he wanted to change some colors here or there, and I would keep going after that. So it's actually maybe even easier than working alone because I don't have to take the decision myself, so someone else is doing it, I just have to execute it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I guess because you don't have to think too much about.
Yeah. I also think that when you work on your personal project, sometimes it doesn't advance because you keep trying to change things and perfect things, but so you always go back in time to change things. But when it's for a client, like the client has a clear idea of what he wants, when he does it's easy because you just have to say, okay, I want this and I want this, and you just keep going.
Did you kind of come up with the idea together, or did he say, oh, I want this? How did it work?
So he had a story in mind, but he didn't really have a whole he didn't have the visual aesthetic yet. He told me he wanted to have a city, quite modern and with a very traditional cafe in the middle, So he explained me his story and what it meant and all. And after that, I made researches myself and we discussed a lot about it. And I came up with some visual concept and he ended up really liking the colors, the color palettes and all. And so right now we're still working on it and we just an exchange, we discuss the story and I propose some visual stuff and he tells me which one he likes the most and we try to see how to make this advance,
Yeah. And where do you kind of, because I'm looking through the page now, and where do you kind of get the visual inspiration for it? Was it just a lot of Pinteresting or?
It depends. I think there's a Gobelins short,
cool.
which is from 2017 maybe, I'm not sure. It has a similar concept as his idea. It's called Best Friend, and so it's also very modern city-like with technology and all. And overall, when he told me about modern versus traditional, I immediately thought of Japan, like Tokyo, because it's a very, very modern city, but you also have very traditional place. So it's a bit of a mix of the both. And he also had some ideas as to how his character would look like he already had the idea of how she would be dressed. So it kind of gave, already an idea of the vibe of what in which we would go on, which is a bit street-like, So yeah, it's a bit like this. And we also are kind of inspired by just globally pixel art games, which have, stories that are unfolding. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. And you mentioned earlier that you think it's okay to have a lot of different styles, but I think that's quite interesting in the context of social media, where everyone follows other people for this one aesthetic that they have. So, what role does social media play for you as an artist?
Social media for me is a place to share art on, and also the things I'm interested in at the moment. So it helped me gain confidence, as many people ended up enjoying my work, you know. And I try to thank people as much as I can, even if it's a bit repetitive. As you said, usually you follow someone for a very distinctive art style, but I kind of noticed that in the end, you know, our style is a bit more than just the way you draw. It's also the subject you chose, the kind of angle of camera you choose in the time, like what kind of narrative you go for. So I feel like I personally changed a lot of interest over time, but I'm really grateful because I can see that people have been following me over the change for a while now, and it really warmed my heart that it took around. So I think to not be too worried about changing style online. It takes a bit of adaptation time, you know, like maybe the first one people will be what is happening, you know. But it's all about experimenting for you and all, and I don't think you should be pressured to keep to a certain aesthetic because of social media. I think if people like your art, they will keep on wondering what you will come up with next. And you know, it's just all kind of different artists. Some artists are really, really with this very amazing and unique style that you admire a lot, and some other are more adaptative. I would say not really adaptative, but they kind of like to change depending on their mood. So it's just two kind of different artists, I think. Yeah. So social media was really a great thing to help me also meet fantastic other artists like those kind of person. And yeah, I made friends there, and it's also inspiration. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think you're one of the few artists I've interviewed who kind of uses Twitter more than they use, let's say, Instagram or Tumblr, or at least I'm assuming you do because you have more followers there. So what draws you towards Twitter as opposed to Instagram?
So I have 3 social media. So I have Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram. I think what draws me to Twitter is that first is the first one I had of the 3 for the beginning. I like Twitter because it's very interactive, you know, like you can share other people's art, like you can really support your fellow artists by retweeting their art, which is impossible in Instagram. Like you have the story sharing, but it's not as effective. And I just think overall it's less intimidating because you don't have always art. You can also just share your thought. And I like to get to know the people behind the art as well as the art, you know. So I think Twitter is nice for it. So that's why I like Twitter best. And I just enjoy learning to know people and all. So yeah.
And do you think there are more opportunities on Twitter than on Instagram?
I think both are kind of equal. I know there's work Twitter on Instagram, but they're also coming on Twitter. So I think both are viable options. Yeah, personally, I've had work thanks to internships and so on. So I don't really know about this. So.
Yeah, that's cool. But that's interesting, I think, because I feel like a lot of artists may benefit from being on Twitter as well as on Instagram, because we automatically think, oh, we're a visual artist, so we should be on Instagram, but they may forget that, oh, Twitter may actually be a useful platform as well.
I think it's important to have both, you know. Because I think the population on Twitter and Instagram isn't the same, so it's not always the same things that the same people you will reach out from Twitter or Instagram. So I think if you want to find work using social media, it's better to have most of them in your card, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. And what kind of messages do you want to leave the viewer with your artwork?
As you said, I often do colorful and cheerful art, so I'd love for viewer to feel a bit of this happiness when looking at it, especially if they're not feeling good. I think it's important to remember that anything you're going through will either pass or will either go well. So yeah, just to bring a bit of hope, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you said you graduated last year, was it?
Last July, actually. So yeah, it really recent.
Okay, so where would you like to see yourself moving forward as an artist?
So after Gobelins, I've learned that I actually wanted to do visual development and background art because I just love color so much. So I need it in my life. And I will be working in the near future in a French animation studio called La Chouette Compagnie on some very cute kid shows. So I'm super excited for it. And since graduating, I've been very nostalgic about Digimon Adventure, as my Twitter may show it. So it was a big show in my childhood, and I remember a lot of things from it and a lot of lessons, that it tried to teach me. And I enjoy to look back at it, even though when I'm 21 years old. So one day I hope to create kids shows that will be so meaningful enough to kids, so when they're older, they will want to look back at it with fondness. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're already halfway there with your new job, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have found this job. I really like it.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely. And do you have any final words that you'd like to say?
That's a good question. I would like to say that I think it's a bit tough to be an artist because you are always stressing about what you should be doing or not. It's hard to let go, but I think when you're really, really feeling bad, the best thing is to try to remember why you like drawing in the first time. So for me, I started drawing because I wanted to draw the character I love so much in the kids shows. So going back to this kind of thing helped me feel better, after a year of stress under this pandemic. So yeah, I think do whatever brings back pure simple happiness when you are struggling. Yeah, remember that art is something that made you happy in the first place. So if it's not making you happy, just take a step back and press, and it will be all right.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message, I think. But thank you so much, Claire. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Claire. I personally found it fascinating hearing about how an animation is made from start to finish, and it was just great to hear her processes and experiences. Remember that you can follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast application of your choice, or you can subscribe to the podcast on Substack and get both the audio and article interview straight into your inbox each week. The links are in the podcast description and in the description of this episode. And of course, you can follow on Instagram and Twitter at pixelpaperpod. And with that, I will see you next week for another episode. Bye.